Hey guys, welcome back to Pewpew Academy. Today we're going to talk about our favorite subject, how to Pewpew. So, a lot of new players ask me, if I'm a new player just getting into the game, what kind of weapon should I level up first? And what I would usually tell them is pick a weapon tree that's good, that's really versatile and good for a lot of different types of activity, and just level that tree. And today we're going to talk about one of these weapon trees. It's the bow tree. So we're going to go through all the different bows in the game, and we're going to talk about what each bow is good for, and we're going to talk about what kind of builds do people usually run with each of those bows. So we're going to start off talking about the longbow. The longbow is a very cheap, very budget-friendly weapon, so it's really good for new players, and it's really good for farming group dungeons. The way you would build with a longbow is with a cleric robe or just any kind of robe, a assassin hood, and a scholar sandal, or any leather shoes for refreshing sprint. I would recommend the scholar sandals, especially if you're new, because of mana issues with the longbow. If you're just spamming your E's, and if you're new, you probably can't afford Limper's capes yet. So the only mana management you will get is from your auto attacks and your scholar sandals. The way you play this build is very simple. You just hit your W, activate your explosive arrows, and then you hit your E on the biggest clump of mobs that you can land the skill on. And what that does is every time your E hits a target, it triggers your explosive arrow. So the targets that are hit are gonna have a little extra AoE damage around them, and that has kind of like a chain effect going on. You can see in the video here, every time the mobs get hit by a tick from my E, you'll see a little explosion around them that's hitting all the other mobs around them too. Now, the really great thing about this build is that there's nearly no cooldown to your big nuking combos because your E is only a 15-second cooldown and your W, I think it's 20. But if you have a assassin's hood on, if you get a full channel off of your assassin's hood, it makes all of your skills come off of cooldown like 15 seconds faster. So you can basically just fire off those combos back to back. And even when you don't have your Assassin's Hood, it's only a 20-second cooldown for your W to come back, which is a whole 10 seconds faster than most other dungeon clearing weapons. I highly recommend that if you're a new player, you stick to using this build for leveling up your bow until you hit level 70 in your mastery. So at level 70 in your mastery, you get a new skill called Ray of Light, and once you get that skill, your farming becomes more flexible. Like, you don't have to do group dungeons anymore. I think doing solo dungeons with Ray of Light it makes things a lot easier. But early on, you really don't have much of a choice, I think, because doing solo dungeons without Ray of Light is a pretty big pain in the ass, in my opinion. So I would recommend that you use this build in group dungeons only until you hit level 70 in masteries. And then you can go keep doing this, or you can switch to a Warbow build for clearing solo dungeons. Next, we're going to talk about the Warbow. The Warbow is like a go-to weapon for solo PvP. For the build, I like to run Guardian Helmet, Cultist Robe, and Scholar Sandals, and Undead Cape. In this build, you have a lot of sustain, a lot of mana regain, so you can just keep running, keep kiting, and keep shooting back your arrows for those big damage snipes. For your skills, on your Q, I like to run Deadly Shot, which is the longest ranged Q that you have, and it's an AoE, so it really helps you with that running and kiting playstyle, which is pretty much necessary for outnumbered fights, like this one that you're seeing on the screen right now. On your W, Frost Shot is a very safe skill to run, but if you're in a matchup against a ranged weapon, in like a 1v1 against a ranged weapon, Ray of Light is better because with Flash Shot you can't really do much. You don't get into melee range of the ranged weapon to slow them. So Ray of Light would be better for that, and it also gives you a lot more damage with Ray of Light. There's another way to build the Warbow, and that's with a Assassin Jacket and a Mage Cowl. Now, it's not my favorite way to build a Warbow, but it is a more slippery build because you have that stealth from the Assassin Jacket, and the Mage Cowl also has a little bit of flexibility on there. You can use the poison skill for extra damage to make up for the fact that you're not running a cloth armor. Or you can use the force field ability to knock people away. So if you get matched up against a bunch of melees, you can use that to help you kite better. Next up, we're going to talk about the Baton Bow. The Baton Bow is usually paired with some kind of a CC weapon like a quarterstaff for small scale PvP or 2v2 Hellgates. This is pretty much a one-shot combo type of thing, because the damage from your Ray of Light plus your E is nearly enough to kill someone just by themselves. Now, if you have someone running a quarterstaff to CC them inside your E's AoE, then you actually would just one-shot them. So in this clip that you see on screen, you saw me basically one-burst that Soulside player. And what I did was, this is like a little modified build. So I'm running a Demon Cape and a Royal Helmet. And the rest of it is the same as my Warbow build. Only I'm running a Baton Bow, of course. So the idea of it is to auto attack for a Demon Cape and then W for your Ray of Light to snare the person inside the Demon Cape. And then you hit your Baton Bow E to drop your big ticking AoE while they're snared. And then you hit your Royal Helmet stun on top of them. So while they're still trapped inside your AoE. So there should be, if I did it right, he should have been trapped inside two of my AoEs, my Demon Cape and my Baton Bow E, and it should have been a one burst effect. Now, of course, you don't have to do all that yourself if you have a partner. If you're running a quarterstaff with the Baton Bow, then you don't have to run the Demon Cape and you don't have to run the Royal Helmet, because that's something that the quarterstaff player can provide for you. Now, despite being a big AoE weapon, Baton Bows are actually not used that often in ZVZs, and I think the biggest reason for this is because you can really only hit the front line with your E, because the arrow that you shoot out will collide with the first target hit and create an AoE around that target, so it doesn't have the same piercing power as the other option, which is the Welding Bow. So let's talk about the Welding Bow and what it does. The Welding Bow E does more extra damage for each extra target that you hit with it. It's a line-shaped skill shot, kind of like a Warbow E, but it's a piercing skill shot. So it'll go through the first target you hit, it'll go through all the targets you hit, and every extra target that you hit with it will give it more damage. So you see here, I'm going to drop a E and a Q, and that's an instant one-shot kill on 3 targets right there. So the way this build works is pretty simple. You turn on your damage buffs, you turn on your explosive arrows, and then you just run in there to drop your big damage. And what actually happens is Royal Hood is going to give you a damage buff, Royal Sandals is going to give you a damage and a movement buff, and then the explosive arrow is going to get triggered each time your demon arrow hits a new target. So when they're all clumped up like that, if you hit your E on them, not only does the E do extra damage for each target hit, it also triggers the explosive arrow every time it hits a new target. So when they're all clumped up like that, they all take damage from your E, they all take damage from explosive arrows, and then you can throw a quick Q at the end to trigger any more explosive arrow charges that you have left and just finish off the low targets. Now, earlier I was comparing the Baton Bow to the Welding Bow. The biggest difference between the two is that in a ZVZ, the Welding Bow's E can hit through your enemy's front line and reach their back line. And by the time it reaches their back line, it's going to be all powered up and doing extra damage. So it's not like the Baton Bow E, which will get stopped by the enemy front line. So that makes it a far better ZVZ weapon. Now, if you're a new player, you're just getting into ZVZs, then you might not want to build this build the way I did, because I built a completely glass cannon. I just go up there and drop one bomb, and if I don't kill them, I die, right? So that might not be the way that you want to play if you're new, and you're just learning to position yourself. So what you want to do probably is maybe you could still run the Royal Sandals, or you could switch to Scholar Sandals, which will give you extra safety because it gives you CC immunity. And then for your helmet, you could run Mercenary Helmet, or you could run Knight Helmet for more CC immunity, so you don't get trapped by enemy engagements. It'll help you stay alive better in a ZVZ. And realistically speaking, like, you don't really have to one-shot someone in a ZVZ to kill them. If you just do a huge chunk of damage to them, you have 20 people behind you who can finish them off, right? So you don't really have to one-shot them like that in a ZVZ. And if you're a new player, it might be better for you to just build more safe. But on the other side of the spectrum, if you want to just say, YOLO, let's go bomb people, then what you could do is, besides running the 2 royal pieces that give you extra damage, you can switch your deadly arrow to spread shot, which gives you a cone-shaped AoE that's going to trigger your explosive arrows a lot better. So in this engagement here, you're going to see me run up there and boom, that's 5 people dead and 2 people running away with 1 health. And the reason why this time I did so much more damage is because of that Q change. So lastly, we're going to talk about the regular bow and the whispering bow. The regular bow and the whispering bow are very similar weapons. They're both single target DPS weapons. The whispering bow has a huge range bonus on its E, so some players like it for the extra safety that it provides, but most people will pick the regular bow for single target DPS because it just does so much more damage. In a lot of my older videos, especially my older Hellgate videos, you'll see me and my Hellgate partner both running a regular bow build. Our builds are Hellion Hood, Mage Robe, and Guardian Boots. The Guardian Boots are pretty standard for Hellgates. It's just a really nice little defensive skill that really saves you against one-shot builds. And Mage Robe is, it's also a really nice defensive skill that purges away a lot of defensive and offensive buffs that people kind of rely on in these small number of fights. And then lastly, the Hellion Hood is a extra little niche little thing. What it does is it drops a little smoke bomb that makes you go invisible as long as you stay inside the smoke bomb. Now the downside is that everybody that's inside the smoke bomb, enemies and friends alike, they're all silenced. So most people, most builds, most weapons can't really take advantage of the smoke bomb. But the bow, because it doesn't use any spells to do damage, it just uses E empowered auto attacks to do damage. You can turn on your E and your explosive arrows, and then you go into stealth, and then you can just auto attack and it'll kill people from stealth. Some people also like to run this build in a healer and DPS comp, but if you do a healer and DPS comp, I recommend you switch off the Hellion Hood and pick up a cleric cowl or a hunter hood for the anti one-shot kind of defensive skills. And the Hellion Hood, it's good in a double DPS comp. If you're using a healer DPS comp, it can really screw up your healer with that silence. And of course, if you get low HP and you go into stealth, then your healer can target you and you can get healed. So it's better to use one of the other defensive skills for that. The regular bow is also used in 5v5 Hellgates and crystals sometimes. Currently, at the time of this video, it's not really meta to run a regular bow in a 5v5 comp, but previously they were really dominant, and it's not because it got nerfed or anything, it's just because other weapons became stronger. But the bow never got nerfed, so if other weapons gets nerfed, then maybe in the future the bow will come back into the 5v5 meta, and that's something to look out for. So as you can see, there's a lot of flexibility in this weapon tree. There's a right bow for pretty much every type of content that you want to do. So if you're a new player and you're trying to decide which weapon to max out first or which weapon to get to 400 first, the bow is not a bad choice just because there's so much flexibility. You can use it for any kind of content. Now, of course, the bow is not the only weapon tree that has this kind of flexibility. There are others, and we're going to talk about those in future videos. So that's it for this video. I hope you found it helpful. If you did, don't forget to like and sub. And if you have any more questions, you can come hop into my Twitch channel and ask me while I'm live. I stream almost every day from 4 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern United States time.